Hello everyone, and welcome to the video. Before we get started, I want to give a major spoiler warning for both The Last of Us and The Last of Us Part 2. I highly recommend playing both games before watching this video because I will be detailing much more than just the big bullet point events, and watching this video first will likely take away much of the bite of discovering things about the games on your own for the first time. So, from this point on, I will assume and talk as if you have played both games at least once. Also, I will be showing images and clips from the games, so violence warning. First off, The Last of Us Part 2 is a very special game to me, and I was fortunate enough to experience it for the first time without any spoilers. It was a lot of work, and I basically had to hibernate from the internet for like a month, but it paid off. After finishing the game soon after its release back in 2020, I knew I would find myself playing it again, but at the same time, I knew it would be quite a while because of the massive emotional toll the game took on me. So now, over 2 years later, with a PS5 and a much nicer TV, I played The Last of Us Part 2 for a second time. The improved graphics from my new setup really made me appreciate the technical mastery that this game was able to achieve on last-gen hardware. And I also started to notice many details that had escaped me during my first playthrough. Even though I was heavily invested in the story during my second playthrough, I was able to take a step back in a way as I wasn't preoccupied with finding out what happened. However, as a side note, I was extremely surprised that I still had that feeling of wanting to know what happens, even though I already knew. But with this newfound ability to clear my mind of the fear of what was going to happen, I was able to instead deeply focus on what was happening in each scene. And as each scene went by, one word stuck out to me more and more as the game progressed: perspective. I believe that this truly is the thesis and central idea of the game. All the topics that I will explore in this video come back to that main idea of perspective in one way or another. The game explores perspective in a way I personally had never seen before, especially for a big AAA title. And there's so much to unpack here, I divided how the game explores perspective into three main categories. The first topic is parallels. This idea of parallels really stuck out to me during my second playthrough, as I didn't feel rushed to find out what happens in the story. One of the first times I noticed this theme was during the flashback scenes for both Ellie and Abby. For many memory scenes we get with Ellie, we get a very similar one with Abby. For Ellie's museum scene with Joel, we also get Abby's aquarium scene with Owen. For Ellie's discovery about the truth about what Joel did at the end of the first game, we get Abby discovering her father's body who had been murdered by Joel. This also happens in the modern day or the adult story. Both Ellie and Abby have similar playful calm before the storm scenes, both characters have intimate scenes with their significant others, and both of their close friends are killed in a very similar manner.
Shit. Jesse, stand up. Hands in the air. I shoot this one too.
Screw it. Let's just...
The game is showing us that Ellie and Abby are actually very similar characters, and if you take a step back and look at their experiences objectively, I think it's a convincing argument. Now, let's break down Abby and Ellie's motivations. Both of their fathers or father figures were murdered, causing them to attempt revenge on their father's murder. Abby's father was murdered by Joel, which caused her to successfully seek revenge by killing him, and Ellie's father figure was killed by Abby, causing Ellie to seek revenge on her. Both characters' motivations are exactly the same. This may sound simple, but that's because the eye for an eye ideology of justice is simple. and the game is challenging the validity of this ideology, and this leads us into my next main point. Point 2. Challenging eye for an eye vengeance and the cycle of violence. These two ideas go hand in hand, so I put them into the same prong. We briefly explored eye for an eye vengeance, but here's what I mean by the cycle of violence. We can even use the same example that we did earlier. Joel killed Abby's father, causing Abby to seek revenge and kill Joel, causing Ellie to seek revenge and kill many of Abby's friends in an attempt to get to her, which caused Abby to seek revenge on Ellie, killing one of her friends, so on and so on. This cycle would likely continue on, but one of the beautiful aspects of this game is we get to witness the cycle be broken. Abby and her friends attempt to break the cycle twice. First, when Joel is murdered, as they debate what to do, agreeing on letting Tommy and Ellie live, as Abby's father was only killed by Joel, not them, and in their eyes, they would be no better than Joel if they killed Ellie and Tommy as well. And secondly, when Abby is about to kill Dina, which, in the eye for an eye ideology, she was completely justified to do, as Ellie had killed both her significant other, Owen, and her pregnant friend, Mel. And Abby was about to gain revenge for both of these deaths in the form of Dina, Ellie's significant other, who was also pregnant. But Lev stops her. But as you know, the cycle does not end there. Ellie eventually goes after Abby again because it's ultimately up to her to end the cycle of revenge. And she does. Ellie is forced to become what she has sworn to destroy, a parental killer. She realizes that if she kills Abby, she would be doing the exact same thing that was done to her, taking away a parental figure from someone. Abby also has this moment at the very beginning of the game. By exacting revenge on Joel, she has also become what she swore to destroy, a father killer. This relates back to the first point about parallels, except Abby completed her revenge and Ellie chose not to, therefore breaking the cycle. Point 3. Challenging the player's perspective. This point is the most subjective and the most challenging, in my opinion. By playing as both Ellie and Abby, and learning so much about both characters and their similar situations, the player is likely confronted with thoughts that they probably never had throughout the first game, like, who is in the right? This question really stuck in my mind after finishing part 2 for the second time, but this also made me question Joel's actions at the end of the first game. Was he justified to kill 30 or so people and deprive the world of a cure to save Ellie's life? While I was always on the fence about where I stood in regards to Joel's actions, looking at it objectively, playing part 2 made me consider that Joel may be in the wrong, as the game showed me the aftermath of his actions and the people who his actions directly affected. But why would he do such a thing? Why would he deprive the world of a cure and indirectly kill at least hundreds of people? This leads us into a sub-point. Family. He did it for family. And he even says that he would do it all over again if he got a second chance at that situation.
You're such an asshole.
I'm not trying to.
I was supposed to die in that hospital. My life would have fucking mattered. But you took that from me.
If somehow the Lord gave me a second chance at that moment, I would do it all over again.
And this is what makes the ethical questions the game asks so challenging, both for me personally and for most players. Many people, myself included, would do anything for family, and for many, this aspect of Joel makes him a good person. While I don't disagree with that opinion, I can't help but think about Joel's actions from an outside perspective, such as Abby's. If the first game had been from Abby's perspective and showed her adventures and struggles with her father, and the second game started with a random person, Joel, killing her father, prompting a revenge journey, I believe that many players would be on her side and would feel completely justified in the revenge killing. That's how I and many other players felt regarding Ellie's revenge at the beginning of Last of Us Part 2. Some random person came out of nowhere and killed our father figure, so our revenge is, of course, completely justified. But why do we feel that way? Well, because we know Joel, and to many players, he's like a father figure, and he may even provide comfort to some players. Then suddenly, a random person has ripped that away from us, and this is also why, myself included, originally felt so justified in our quest to kill Abby, because we don't know who she is or anything about her. That's the same reason why Abby felt so just in killing Joel. He was someone she knew nothing about who came out of nowhere and killed her father. It's easy to villainize someone you don't know. Communication is the key to understanding, and when there's no way to communicate, it's not only easy, but natural to hate and villainize someone who's wronged you. To use a real-life example of this idea in action, we can look at the Christmas truce during World War I. On Christmas Day 1914, British and German troops agreed to stop fighting each other for the day, and they even socialized with each other on the battlefield. This included playing soccer, taking pictures together, and just talking. This event is one of a kind because afterwards the higher-ups were concerned that truces like this would humanize the enemy and lower the fighting spirit in their troops, so they prevented any events like this from happening again. One might feel morally just when fighting an ambiguous, faceless, evil enemy, but once both sides converse together and begin to realize how similar they are to each other, one's moral high ground may seem much lower than it once was. Another question that stayed present in my mind while playing Part 2 was, what makes your family more important than someone else's? Many people, myself included, will say, because they're mine. That was both Ellie and Abby's argument, which caused this vicious cycle of violence. This also makes me think about the countless amount of unnamed NPCs I killed throughout my journey, as both Ellie and Abby. Surely in this world they have families and friends too. Does one's quest for vengeance justify killing any who would stand in their way, even if those people are not responsible for the original death that sparked the revenge journey? The game even attempts to spark this idea in the player by humanizing the enemies you encounter. There are many times where the player would kill an enemy, and another enemy would call out something like, "They killed Daniel."
Still could have. Kira! Came from that way!
Or an NPC would have a spine-chilling scream as they died.
Through this window! This way!
Even in my first playthrough of Part 2, the more enemies I killed, the more I thought about that. In this world, those NPCs are people, with friends and family and interests, quirks, unique personalities. Every enemy I killed is the main character in their own story. So what makes my story, Ellie and Abby's, more important than theirs? The answer is perspective. By now you may have noticed that I've asked a lot of questions, and this is purposeful because I believe that these are all questions that the game asks the player. I believe this is one of the reasons the game is so controversial and so polarized. The game asks these morality-based questions, and many players have many different answers. Many people side with Ellie and Joel, because in a way, they are like family to them. They know them well from the hours they spent with both of them in the first game. the players have gotten to know their personalities, hobbies, likes and dislikes. The player knows them. Some side with Abby, as Joel is the one who started it all by denying the world a cure to the apocalypse and killing Abby's father in the process. But there are others like myself who are somewhere in the middle. According to Eye for an Eye justice, both sides in Part 2 are justified. Yet how can they be? As the famous quote goes, an eye for an eye only makes the world blind. And I think this is the core idea the game is getting at, especially with its ending. Building up to Ellie's final fight with Abby, playing the game made me ask questions like, how can matching someone's violence with an equal violence of your own be positive? Ellie realizes the flaws of the eye for an eye doctrine throughout her journey for revenge, as she is forced to match Abby's violence in order to exact her revenge. This is most present after she kills Nora in a very similar manner to how Joel was killed, and on top of that, the game forces the player to do it by pressing a button.
I'm not giving up, my friend.
While pressing a button is much different from swinging a pipe at someone's head, the fact that the player must physically do an action that causes Ellie to hit someone with a pipe makes the scene a million times more impactful than if it was just a standard cutscene, or at least it did for me. After this scene, when Ellie returns to the theater, she's visibly shaken up, and the player possibly is as well after being forced to kill Nora in such a brutal manner, matching Abby's violence.
Come on. Let's get you cleaned up. Arms up. I made her talk. It's okay.
The second most obvious time that Ellie shows her internal conflict is during her final fight with Abby at the very end of the game. Abby is finished with this cycle of violence between her and Ellie, as she found new meaning to life in caring for Lev as a parental guardian figure. The only way Ellie can get Abby to fight her is by threatening to kill Lev, threatening to do something that was not done to her, to go beyond the values of eye for an eye. Abby agrees to fight her, and as the fight is uneven with Ellie being armed with a knife and Abby only her fists, Ellie has the capability to kill her opponent, to exact her revenge, to avenge Joel, to gain the thing she has struggled for years to gain. As Ellie is drowning Abby, she chooses to let her live at the last moment. As Ellie is confronted with the reality that if she kills Abby, she is doing to Lev exactly what was done to her. She would be making her world blind. Another phrase that stuck in my head after finishing the game is this what Joel would have wanted? Would Joel have wanted Ellie to risk her own life, the life of her spouse, and have Jesse die in this quest for revenge? To kill countless people in search for vengeance? Unfortunately, we'll never truly know, but my gut tells me revenge is not what he would have wanted. Joel is undeniably a killer, but his motivations for killing in the first game are much different from Ellie's motivations in the second. He did what he did at the hospital to give Ellie the chance to live a full life, a normal life, a good life. Joel died for Ellie, but I do not believe he wanted her to die for him. I believe that Ellie realizes this and ends the cycle of violence by letting Abby go, and saving Lev from becoming what she has become. Someone driven by revenge, someone who has sacrificed everything they have and everything they hold dear to achieve it. Friends, family, a normal life. So as Ellie is drowning Abby, she lets go at the final moment, breaking the cycle and not only setting Abby and Lev free, but setting herself free. By showing how destructive revenge can be for everyone involved, The Last of Us Part 2 challenges the norm of vengeance, both in media and in life. By showing both sides and giving the player the rare opportunity to literally walk a day in the other person's shoes. That is why I strongly believe that The Last of Us Part 2 is a masterclass in perspective. I hope that you have found this video interesting and it's inspired you to think more about the game and its messages. Or if you had the exact same thoughts that I did, then I hope this video confirmed that you're not the only one. Thank you so much for watching this video. This is the first video essay analysis style video I've ever done, and after finishing The Last of Us Part 2 for the second time, I just had some very deep conversations about the game, and I really felt compelled to get my thoughts down in a recorded format. So I wanted to give some credit where credit is due. Two YouTubers who really inspired me and helped me with the format for this video are Schnee and Sean. They do similar analysis type videos about various medias, and they really helped me with the format. I'll link their channels in the description, so go check them out if you want to see more videos of this style. Thank you again for watching, and I really hope you enjoyed the video.